Hello there, Alaskans, wherever you are. Welcome to the Must Read Alaska Show, coming to you from somewhere in Alaska. This is the place where we talk about, you guessed it, Alaska, where we keep the mainstream media on their toes and where we are standing up for what's right in a world run by leftists. You can find out more by heading over to mustreadalaska.com and also checking out the Must Read Alaska YouTube channel for some really great content. But first, let's get this party started.
Thank you, Scott. Hello, everybody, and welcome aboard Must Read Alaska, coming to you from somewhere in Alaska. And we're glad we're not at Anchor Point at this moment because apparently there's a wanted man down there who's just shot a state trooper, and we're hoping the best for him, the trooper, and we're hoping that our state troopers and law enforcement can round up the fellow who's missing in action, but needs to be cuffed and taken away. Must Read Alaska is the place for conservative news and content. We're standing up for a strong America, free Alaska. We're always in your corner fighting for your constitutional rights. And you can find out more on our website at mustreadalaska.com. Also, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, we're on all the favorite places, including the new website, Getter, GETTR.com. I'm Suzanne Downing, and you can find my column, Must Read America, at Newsmax. So my host, John Quick, is with us. And John, how's your mic sounding today?
Hello, mic check. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Nice. I'm down in the beautiful city of Kenai today, actually, and things in Nikiski are going well. Our borough mayor, Charlie Pierce, is always fighting for your freedoms and for your individual liberties. At the last assembly meeting, he gave them hell by challenging the hospital to let their doctors be doctors. He made a point that why is it the only thing that we can do about COVID is do a vaccine? Why can't doctors actually do what they're supposed to do and treat symptoms? And he got into a back and forth with the CEO of our hospital here, and the local papers here obviously don't want anything to do with anything conservative, and so they painted it in a picture of, Charlie shaming the local hospital. But all he was really doing was saying, hey, listen, we got these doctors, we got these medical experts. Why can't we just let them do their job? What's the reasoning here? He gave an example of a friend of his went into the hospital, a couple of weeks ago, with symptoms of pain and various other things. And because there was a whole bunch of COVID patients in the ER, they couldn't admit him in. They just gave him some pain meds and sent him on his way. Well, it turns out this guy had to go back to the hospital 2 weeks later, and he had cancer, and he, all over his body. And 2 weeks when it comes to cancer going all over your body is you've wasted a lot of time. And
yeah, that's true.
I think he makes a good point. Why can't doctors be doctors? And I think that's something that we should look at as we, go down this crazy COVID thing where it looks like there's no end in sight.
No end in sight. And what Mayor Charlie Pierce of the Kenai Borough is really saying is there are protocols, there are medications, there's certain kinds of pharmaceutical cocktails you can give to people that include Z-Paks and names of medications that I can't recall or pronounce. But what he's saying is, why aren't we doing those in Alaska? Those are actually kind of hard to get. Up here, they kind of tell you to just go home and rest. And why not attack this thing early with medications that are known to work? But a lot of doctors up here and elsewhere are kind of afraid of speaking out about various treatments. And they're a little bit worried about what will happen to them, as the same way that journalists and our website too, we're worried about what will happen to us if we talk about COVID, if we even mention the C word, will we be canceled from the internet? Yeah, that'll actually happen to our YouTube channel. And so people are rightfully concerned, and maybe Charlie doesn't have as good of a grasp on what that's like because he doesn't care. He's just going to talk. He's going to talk for the people.
Do what he wants, which is great. That's why we elected him.
Oh no, he's a honey badger with Kenai. He's great.
Yeah. The other news in Nikiski is we got a new fire station. It's our third fire station, and we have a very large, amazing tax base in Nikiski because that's where all the oil companies are located. The big ones here more or less here on the Kenai Peninsula. And so we got a third fire station. These fire stations have to kind of have specialty technical services for these big oil companies that have plants in our area. And so
yeah, I'm going to call bogus on this, by the way. I just checked the number of people that live in Akiski. You've got 4,300 people live in Akiski. You've got one fire station for every 1,400 people. Up here in Anchorage, there's 288,000 and we have 13 fire stations. And I did the math. That's one fire station for every 22,000 people. Wait a second. So what is so conservative about Nikiski after all? Do tell.
Do tell, I will. Our mill rate is nothing compared to what is in Anchorage because our tax base, basically these oil companies fund these fire stations, which I'm a big fan of. They would rather have this, have good support when they need it. And so our mill rate's way lower than anybody in Anchorage would ever even dream about. And, this third fire station is hopefully going to be primarily stationed with volunteers is the goal.
Oh, okay. Well, I like volunteer fire stations. Hey, listen, we have a great guest today. I want to jump over to Rick Whitbeck, who's joining us. Rick, how's your mic sounding today?
I hope it's sounding good. I'm excited to be here. Appreciate everybody listening in, and John and Scott and Suzanne, appreciate the opportunity to join you guys.
Excellent. Rick Whitbeck is with Power of the Future here in Alaska, and he agreed to join us today and talk about how our politics intersects with our energy economy here in Alaska. Welcome to the show, and we are going to really focus on how the governor's race is starting to shape up and what the different candidates, what their different perspectives are on energy and resource development. And we were talking about this earlier, and I said, I don't know, why don't we just save this conversation for the podcast, because this is some good stuff.
Yeah, there's certainly going to be clear indicators of where people sit right now within the people who have declared for the governor's race. There are some big differences between Dunleavy and Guerra and Walker, and to a lesser extent Billy Toyen. I mean, Billy doesn't have a whole lot of really defined positions, and certainly as the libertarian candidate.
Yeah, Billy's the libertarian
candidate. Right? We can look at the Libertarian Party, small government, kind of resource centric, but not much in the way of they're a little bit more green than the Republicans or AIP candidates are. So Billy's a pretty toe the line libertarian. We'll just mention this right now. He has no chance to win, but he's declared if he follows the Libertarian Party, he'll be good and bad for Alaska on resources. But we can stop talking about that, because even with ranked choice voting, Billy Toyen has no chance to win the governor's race. There are three that do, though, Suzanne. And I'm guessing you want me to talk about, let's talk about the incumbent, right? Mike Dunleavy first and foremost.
Yeah. Let's talk about Dunleavy, because he's obviously running with the Trump endorsement. He's running with he'll have Republican Governors Association endorsement. He'll have a lot of, he's already had a fundraiser with Trump. So.
Yeah, certainly. One of the things that I think when Mike was elected here 3+ years ago, or almost 3 years ago, one of the things that I thought really, really stood out was his very open stance towards opening up as much of Alaska as possible for responsible development. He ran on a different platform than incumbent Governor Walker, certainly a different platform than eco-extreme guy Mark Begich, who I guess those roles are going to continue to be played by Walker and eco-freak Les Guerra, but we'll get into that those two guys a little bit more. Here's what my conversations with Mike Dunleavy have been, though, over the last 3 years. Alaska's rich in mineral wealth. Alaska's rich in oil and gas. We have a bunch of state lands that have been purveyed to us, a lot more that are still owed to us. Anything we can do to responsibly develop those, bring jobs to Alaska, bring revenues to Alaska, need to be done as quickly as possible, working within the various environmental frameworks. But as Washington drags their feet, Governor Dunleavy gets more and more ticked off.
Right. You see it in his tweets anyway. He's saying, this will not stand. This isn't the last you've heard of us. Then he shakes his fist. But there's not a lot he can do, really.
No, certainly he can huff and puff a little bit. And I say that respectfully, right? He can he can kind of play the Trump-esque card. We're going to get to the bottom of this. We're going to develop Alaska's lands, but you're still in a lot of situations, Suzanne, you're kind of at the beck and call of the federal government, the permitting process. Now, if he wanted to just go rogue, he could certainly do that and do some things for the state, but at what risk to Alaska from the federal judiciary, and at what risk to Alaska from, just lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit from these leave it in the grounders that would attack him more so than they would ever attack any governor probably in history.
Yeah, that's right. Well, so then let's take a look at Bill Walker. Bill Walker was the China Bill. He was the gas line to China kind of thing. He was going to have the Chinese own the means of production, which is what Chinese like to do. He nationalized the gas line for Alaska, and that sort of the first step toward turning the whole means of production over to the Chinese. And then he left office, and along with him, Keith Meyer. So we know that he's very pro gas development, less so for oil. He wants to see the gas that we're now reinjecting into the fields. He wants to see that monetized, I guess, is what we want to say. But really, the price of gas, it never really penciled out. So talk to us about that.
Yeah. So first of all, Bill Walker, good friend of Robin Brenna, very good friend of Robin Brenna, law partners with Robin Brenna. Robin Brenna and Bill Walker have made millions of dollars over the years suing the oil companies on behalf of municipalities and landholders. So when you talk about he'd love to monetize gas, but he's not such a big friend of oil, you're really you're being nice to him, Suzanne. Bill Walker and his buddy Robin Brenna hate the major oil companies here in the state. They would much rather sue them than work with them. That being said, his campaign website in 2014, I went back and looked at it. His campaign website in 2018 is a lot of BS. Oh yeah, we understand that Alaska's resource economy runs through the oil fields. Well, yeah, certainly it does. And you've sued them for years. We need to get gas to market. Okay, so you're going to give it to the Chinese?
Yeah,
the Chinese don't care about Alaskans and Alaska's jobs and Alaska's economy. And well, certainly the Chinese don't care about the permanent fund or the permanent fund dividend. Neither does Bill Walker, but that's another side.
Except in the way that it actually can be the money that backs the project, so that we have some surety on it. I mean, it's handy to have $80 billion there when you're going to build a $40 billion gas line and then sell gas for less than what it costs to develop it. Yeah, that's handy.
Yeah, I mean, certainly Bill Walker's Chinese-owned, Chinese-run, Chinese-influenced, Chinese backed pipeline to deliver gas to market isn't good for Alaska in the end. And that's why it was not only rejected by, the public in hearings, it was rejected when he ran in 2018 for re-election. He and Heidi Drygas, his running mate, certainly have the backing of the labor unions, the Joey Merricks, the Joelle Halls, and people like that who run the major labor movement here in the state. They want those union jobs, but they don't have to have it through Bill Walker. They can get it just as easily through Mike Dunleavy or anybody else that runs on a let's actually do what's right for Alaska and not let's just do what's right for the Chinese. By the way, the communist Chinese who hate America.
Yeah. Well, and they've had their exports in the past year. Don't they have enough exports right now? Can't we just? Yeah,
certainly.
The virus.
Walker also has two things that I just want to point out to your listeners. Number one, he says he's pro mining, but he's anti pebble.
He's totally anti.
And he says it all over his website. We love mining. Oh, Byron and I love mining. Byron and I think mining is amazing for Alaska, but we both hate pebble because the science says this and the science says that. Well, since he was defeated back in 2018, the science was very clear that pebble would harm fish. The final EIS, environmental impact statement, was very clear, 53 times, as a matter of fact, that the fish and pebble could coexist. So it'll be interesting to see when he and Heidi launch their website here soon, whether or not his stance on pebble, because everybody says follow the science, trust the science, if it's changed since 2018. I'm pro mining, but I hate pebble. Kind of a Bill Walker double talk.
Right. Well, and we don't really know where he stands on Donlin, but we noticed that the eco extremists are now turned their focus to the Donlin mine and also Ambler to try to take down those two projects. And so we really don't know where Bill Walker stands on those. But how does Heidi Drygas figure into all that? She's a labor attorney for major, labor interests in the state. Typically, they want jobs, right?
Yeah, when Vince Beltrami was the head of the AFL-CIO and running that, I mean, Vince and I have, other than fly fishing and wanting to see Alaska energy jobs come up, not a whole lot in common, but he certainly wanted those jobs in the oil and gas fields and in the mines. He wanted them unionized, and some are, some aren't. I would think that Heidi and Walker would want the same thing. They want as many jobs as possible, as long as the eco left doesn't co-opt them very well, as long as they're union jobs. And it's one of the things that I love about mining jobs. Most of them are shift work, right? 2 on, 2 off, right. 4 on, 2 off. And yet, even though they hire rural Alaskans, they hire people from within the region, like up at Red Dog, at Fort Knox, at Usabelli, they have these shift jobs, and they still get paid on average over $100,000 a year. Those are life-changing, generation changing jobs. If you unionize them and have to pay, I'm going to just say I'm indifferent on that, but certainly let's let the development happen, and then we'll worry about whether they're union or merit jobs on the back end. Development needs to happen, especially if this whole Green New Deal just transition gets passed in like a $3.5 trillion reconciliation bill, which is another topic for another day, Suzanne.
Yes. Oh gosh, good topic.
We could talk that. I could talk that till I'm purple in the face, right?
Yeah, we're not going to do that.
But certainly Walker and Drygas will want as many union jobs to pay back the people who are going to be backing them the most.
No, yeah. Okay, well, let's talk about Les Guerra for a minute. So Les Guerra announced, he said he was going to do this exploratory committee, and then he and Hollis French went on a rafting trip. I guess that was the exploratory committee. They explored the Kobuk River someplace up north. And then they came back and he didn't announce a running mate. And of course, Les Guerra is a former member of the House of Representatives for many years, almost 20 years, never made a speaker and never really got probably the respect maybe that he felt he deserves. He's been sort of anti-oil, and I don't know that the oil interests in the state really like him or trust him very much, but he says on his website that he is pro-oil development. He says he voted for ANWR, but he's against Pebble. So what do you know about Les Guerra?
Yeah, Les Guerra is going to end up being, unless somebody comes in further left than he is, the darling of the extremist movement here in the state of Alaska for 2 reasons. Number one, he's a long-standing opponent of Pebble. Mm-hmm. And 2, the idiots that run eco-left groups across the state, whether it's the Alaska Center for the Environment, Cook Inlet Keeper, Northern Alaska Environmental Center, whoever it is, Suzanne, all of those guys lead and follow their national kind of cohorts, lead the charge in Alaska, following the Audubon Society and and Trout Unlimited and those guys. Pebble is target number 1, even more so than ANWR in this state, to make sure that never happens. So with Less is More Guerra, or Less is Less Guerra, coming out and being the true longtime Pebble opponent, he'll get a lot of that support. Now, what Les has always said, I support oil. And then he and Wilkowski and a lot of those Democrats are like, we support oil as long as they pay their fair share. We support oil as long as they're taxed to where they can't claim record profits across the state. We support oil as long as they help us get enough revenue to where we can grow government even bigger and more intrusively than it was, yesterday, right? So Les has never met a government worker that he doesn't want to double in priority and double in influence and increase in wages. He's never met a department that he doesn't want to see grow. And what's the easiest way to do that historically? Tax the crap out of the oil companies. Yeah. Well, we've seen what's happened, right? Once we've started to do that, Sarah Palin's horrific ACEs movement, companies just are like, dude, I can go deal with warlords and pay them bribes and not have to deal with an ever-changing economy in a place that should want us. And they just take their investment dollars and they go elsewhere. So Alaskans who want to see Les Guerra in the governor's mansion also want to see Alaskan oil companies suffer, Alaskan oil and gas jobs go away, and Alaska permanent fund royalties that go into the fund every year shrink. Period.
So who is his actual base? Because doesn't he sort of anchor at this point the far, far left? I mean, could anybody jump in and run for governor who's more left wing than Les Guerra, or is that our defined left wing?
I think Les is our defined left wing. Now, I think you're going to see one person jump in the middle of what we'll call, if we call Dunleavy the right. Not saying far right. Dunleavy is the right now. Walker is kind of taking that middle right, that center right. I think you could see somebody jump in center left and push and marginalize Guerra out to the left. I think I think could be Mike Navarre.
Mike Navarre. Well, John, quick, are you still on the phone? You're a Mike Navarre expert, aren't you?
Oh yes, the lovely Mike Navarre, former
borough mayor.
Former borough mayor, former representative, in the 80s and 90s. And, I think the thing that Mike's going to come out hard with is wanting to promise the peninsula the LNG project in some way, shape, or form, even though he's been behind the scenes kind of against it. With him, you're going to get somebody he's going to tout as the business guy, but he is
he's a business guy, right?
He's the Democrat, though.
He owned all the Arby's for a while, and then he sold those, and he's got millions of dollars, and he's got a lot of property, doesn't he? A lot of rentals and malls and stuff. What's his thing? He's quite well off.
He still owns Arby's, and he does a lot for the community. That's one thing I will give Mike credit for, is he's always donating, like to Boys and Girls Club. He's always a top donor. He's always donating to schools that need money. His whole family is always donating to stuff. So kudos to him for doing that. But I think if Mike Navarre is our mayor, you're going to see a drastic change to the left.
Well, I think if Mike runs for governor, and I think he'll get in personally. If he runs, he'll run as like you said, the businessman's center left candidate, kind of that chamber of commerce. We're not going to give the oil companies everything they want because we need to fill a budget gap with revenues. We want an LNG line. We would never give it to the Chinese. Kind of that pragmatic center left candidate. I think there's room for one in there that will help marginalize Guerra as the extremist in almost every case that Les is. The only reason that I think Mike wouldn't get in is he's a friend of Walker's. He was a former commissioner under Walker. He's kind of in that same general area. Ranked choice voting will play a large key there, though. I mean, does he kill Walker's chances, or does he help Walker's chances, right? If you vote Navarre 1 and Walker 2, does that actually help or hurt in ranked choice voting? I just think there's room for a center left candidate. And let's be very, very honest, Mike Navarre isn't Les Guerra. He's not Mike Dunleavy. He has conditions on energy jobs and energy opportunities, and he's certainly less pro-development than the Dunleavy campaign, but he's certainly way more. I'd much rather have Mike Navarre as my governor than I would Les Guerra, without any question in my mind.
Oh, say that again. What?
I would much rather have Mike Navarre as my governor. If it was between he and Guerra only, I would much rather have Navarre than Guerra.
That's a shocker right there. Well, any of these guys have to have some sort of a base. Now, we talked at the beginning about how we know that Mike Dunleavy has a pretty good base. It's the conservative base. He's basically won over the business interests in the state. People realize that, yeah, he's a school teacher from Kotzebue and a rancher from Wasilla, but he is in favor. His daughter is a miner. I think both his daughters work in the mines.
Both his daughters, yeah.
And he's pro mining and he's pro oil, and I don't think he's done anything to irritate business owners, which is important. And
he handled COVID as well as any governor really in the country, given some of the hand tying that the legislature gave him, and people like idiot Mayor Berkowitz and Quinn Davidson, who didn't do him any favors by jumping the gun on their own COVID restrictions. Right? He won a lot of people over with the way that he handled COVID.
I know he has, and actually, so he's got a base. I'd say it's a pretty strong base, and I know his approval rating is pretty good. I've seen some polling on him. Now, who is the base for Bill Walker? He quit just before the election last time, and still got 5,000 votes, which was surprising that he got that many. But he was tanking so badly, he just went in a terrible spiral. And I know that Scott Kendall's been really pushing him now. But who is the rest of his base?
Labor union, labor support, those people who believe that we should fight the oil and gas companies or the oil companies, and build up the permanent fund without them. His base is really the same people that probably voted for him over Parnell back in 2014, minus pragmatic, responsible Alaskans.
Well, now Les Guerra is going to peel off the Democrats, the real eco-leftist Democrats, and we've got a few of them here in Anchorage. As I go around, I see we have quite a few of them. These anti-Pebble Mine people. Les Guerra could really take a few votes from Walker on that. So that's going to be troubling for the Alaska Democratic Party, because who are they going to back? Are they going to back Les Guerra, who is the registered Democrat? They kind of have to, don't they?
Yeah, I think they do. Don't you think so, John? I mean, I think that if the Alaska Democratic Party backs Walker, they really send a mixed message to the progressive wing of that party, especially the young people who see Walker as already failing to do what they wanted, what the young radicalized, social justice, critical race theory backing, leave it in the ground, just transitioners. None of those guys are Bill Walker fans. I mean, they would have to be more Guerra fans.
Yeah, that's where I think that Mike Navarre's gonna kind of sneak through those lines and could end up with some more votes than what people think, because he word on the street was he would have liked to have been appointed lieutenant governor when Walker had to appoint somebody, and holds probably a little bit of a vendetta against not being appointed, and would probably like to beat Walker as well as win being the governor. So I bet Mike Navarre is going to go hard after trying to get the D's to come behind him if he can make some steam here.
No, that's right, because they're both, but he and Guerra are registered Democrats, and of course, Bill Walker is a registered undeclared, or registered in a nonpartisan. So that's interesting. Well, I know that we've got to let you go, and Rick, but tell people where they can find out more about Power of the Future and what it's doing for Alaska and what your mission is.
We are the voice of energy workers across America, Suzanne. We're kind of uninhibited, kind of uninhibited capitalists, right? We want jobs across America. We want the government to get out of the way of development opportunities. We're not a fossil fuel, only solution group. I'd take green energy in Alaska. I love green energy, but green energy can't come at the expense of, you can't give, somebody one job and take away 12. That doesn't make any sense. We want to grow energy jobs across America. We want to protect the jobs that are out there that the Democrats and far left, the AOCs and Ed Markeys and people like that of the world want to do away with, because there's millions of families across the country that are working in traditional energy jobs today, and they need a real opportunity to continue to feed their family and be cornerstones in their community. So you can find us on powerthefuture.com. I do a weekly radio program on Tuesdays here in the South Central area, the Power of the Future Energy Hour on KVNT. We're also on Twitter. I'm at PTF Alaska. Daniel Turner is at Daniel Turner PTF. He's our founder. And we're just at Power of the Future as well. We're on Facebook at Power of the Future. We archive all of our media hits at SoundCloud. Search for Power of the Future. We have a podcast called You're Frackin' Welcome.
That's a good podcast, by the way.
That's a fun podcast. We do it about every other week. It's on all the same platforms. And, we're on Insta and everywhere else that I can't think of. But basically, search for Power of the Future. I also write a couple of blog posts a week on powerthefuture.com. Suzanne, you're kind enough to pick some of them up and rerun them. And we appreciate everything that you're doing to protect energy jobs here across Alaska. What you and Scott and John have here with the weekly podcast is awesome. I probably catch every, 2 out of every 3.
Hey, that's pretty
sometimes
good.
It gets a little crazy busy, but I need to go back and listen to a couple that I missed. But thank you for what you guys are doing. Thank you for the opportunity to come on. You can always hit me up, guys, at rick@powerthefuture.com. I love constructive criticism. I love hate mail because it just means that you are wasting your time attacking me when you should be out there helping rational Alaskans grow jobs. How about that?
Amen on that. El, you have a good day over there, and we'll bring you on in a couple of weeks, and we'll continue the conversation about politics in Alaska. And
Sounds good, guys. Thanks again.
You bet. And for the rest of everybody, before we go, please sign up for the Must Read Alaska newsletter. It goes out 3 times a week, gets right into your email box, and it's a good newsletter. We've got 12,400 subscribers, and we appreciate every single one of you. If you'd like to support the work of conservative journalism in Alaska, just drop a donation in the donate box at mustreadalaska.com. Thanks so much. Appreciate that. And we will see you here next week. But you could also check in on Wednesday when Scott Levesque has his version of Must Read Alaska show. He is the better version of the Must Read Alaska show because he's got always a lot of great content. Until next week, signing off from somewhere in Alaska.